Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our fifth edition of the Fulbright Association's Fulbright Lens global webinar. My name is Leland Lazarus. I serve as the president and the chair of the Fulbright Association. If this is your first time joining us, the Fulbright Association is the alumni arm of the Fulbright program. We represent over 140,000 Fulbright alumni here in the US, but then we also have strategic partnerships with our sister alumni associations all around the world. And so in total, we represent 400,000 Fulbright alumni all around the world. And this year is a very special year for us. We're celebrating the 80th anniversary of the Fulbright program. And the Fulbright Lens is one of many programs that we have to really bring together the global community in order to tackle some of the greatest issues impacting our nation and this world. Just some housekeeping and some programs I want to let you guys know about is our inaugural Fulbright Day of Service, our global day of service that we're going to be having in just a couple of weeks' time on Saturday, August 1st. So if you haven't registered for that program, we're calling on all Fulbrighters all around the world to commit to doing a community service project that day. So that's Saturday, August 1st. And then we're also going to be hosting our Fulbright International Conference in DC this year at Johns Hopkins SAIS. And so we're excited about that one as well in celebration of our 80th anniversary. So we encourage you to register for that as well. But this is also the fifth edition of our Fulbright Lens webinar series. We've done four more this year as well. We've done one on Venezuela. We've done one on the Iran conflict, ongoing conference going on there. We've had a webinar on careers in international education, and our most recent one on Peace Corps and Fulbright working together as international change agents. But today's topic is entitled Scamdemic, how digital scam farms are stealing money from around the world. Now, when many people hear the word scam, they usually think of some poorly written text message that's easy to spot. But today's scams are very different. They're industrialized, they're globalized, they're technologically sophisticated, and they're deeply human. Now, across parts of Southeast Asia, particularly in places like Myanmar and Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, criminal networks have built digital scam centers that operate almost like corporate call centers for organized crime. And they're using social media, data, dating apps, messaging platforms, cryptocurrency, AI, in order to build trust with victims over weeks and months in order to steal their savings. These crimes are often called pig butchering scams, a brutal term that reflects the way that scammers slowly fatten up a victim emotionally and financially before taking everything that they can. But behind that term are two sets of victims: the people around the world who lose their life savings and the trafficked or coerced workers inside the scam compounds who are forced to defraud others using threats, abuse, and violence. And this issue is especially relevant to our Fulbright community because the Fulbright Association itself and one of our local chapters have been victims of these digital scams. And so today's topic has direct relevance for our organization's very survival. And it's particularly important because many of our members of the Fulbright Association are retired or nearing retirement. And older Americans are among the most heavily targeted populations of digital fraud. They may have savings, retirement accounts, and scammers tailor their approaches accordingly, and the results can be financially and emotionally devastating. And so that's why we are so very fortunate to have two extraordinary speakers with us today to deal with this important topic. The first is Hyo-Min No. Now, earlier in his life, Hugh was actually involved in major cybercrime and identity theft scams that harm millions of people. But after serving time in the United States, he returned to Vietnam and chose a different path, one using his technical knowledge to fight scams, educate the public, protect users, and help people understand how cyber criminals operate. His perspective is very rare because he understands the machinery of cybercrime from the inside, but now uses that knowledge to protect others. Now, we're also joined by Erin West, who's the founder of Operation Shamrock and one of the leading voices in the global fight against digital scam networks. After more than 2 decades as a prosecutor focused on cybercrime and cyber and cryptocurrency-enabled fraud, Erin now leads a cross-border effort to expose the scam economy, working with industry, civil society, law enforcement, and ordinary citizens to deal with these people. Erin has also recently testified before Congress on this very topic, and I encourage you all to also look online and have a listen. And so with that, our goal is not only to understand the problem, but to understand how we, as the global Fulbright community, what we can do about it and how we can protect ourselves and our community. And so with that, let's begin. Now, Hugh, from your unique perspective as someone who once participated in cybercrime and now works to stop it, how has the scam ecosystem evolved from individual hackers and identity thieves into today's industrial scam compounds?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Leland. I have seen this evolution from two different sides. When I was involved in cybercrime between 2007 and 2013, most of the ecosystem kind of still very new and kind of just the beginning of cybercrime. Like back then, like an individual with a laptop could obtain like stolen data and sell it to like underground forums and serve cyber criminal around the world without even like leaving home. And it was like already kind of like international, but it was mainly kind of like individuals and sometimes maybe like small groups connecting to like online marketplaces. Like for my kind of for my background, right? Back then I was running kind of like identity theft market, kind of marketplace to sell to other cyber criminal around the world, and I was doing like many different things from hacking to design a website, to do money laundering, even like secure the website, that to make sure that nobody can hack my website, because like back then other cyber criminal they also like hacking each other as well too, the same as today. And today like that ecosystem has become like an industry. That's what we have, like modern scam compounds operate like criminal corporation. They have managers, recruitment teams, technical departments. They have a scripted conversation, performance targets like KPI to their employees, cyber slave, and customer database that they either they buy it or they can hack it. They can hack that from other website or other system. And they also have the money laundering networks, and also specialists who build the fake website or the fake investment platform. And some worker they they participate they participate willingly, and but many other they recruited to like fake job advertisement. They've been checked into like scam compound across the borders, and they forced to scam under threat or violence. And criminals have also divided the operation into like kind of like specialized service. One group they collect personal data, another group they create fake identity, and another they contact the victims, and the technical team they build the convincing investment platform, and also the money mills and crypto wallets, and the underground banking networks move the process, move the money. And of course, UNODC, they describe this as an interconnected ecosystem involving like scams, center, data broker, human traffickers, money laundering, and other specialist service providers. And for Fulbright community, the important lesson is that the global connectivity has removed distance from cybercrime. A victim may be in the US, but the person message them may be inside a scam compound. Could be in Myanmar. And of course, right now, in Myanmar, it's still so many scam compound over there. They hidden into the mountain and out of nowhere. After Cambodia, they've been cracking down and shut down so many scam compound, and now they kind of like scatter around. And the fake website, like maybe hosted somewhere else. It could be hidden behind Cloudflare or any kind of security service. They abuse these kinds of service to be able to operate their scam. And the money may pass to like several countries within minutes and end up into like USDT cryptocurrencies. But the answer is not to become like less open or less internationally ingrained. The answer is to combine the openness with verification, and of course protect your identities. And a meaningful conversation is not a proof of honest intention. Right.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Now, I mean, let's move to the perspective of the victims. And Erin, I'm coming to you because I listened very fervently to your congressional testimony last month, and you started off your testimony really highlighting everyday Americans who have been real victims and have been scammed out of, tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And usually these are older Americans, including many retirees, who are among the most vulnerable targets. So throughout your whole time leading Operation Shamrock, and even in your professional life, what makes retired Americans especially attractive to these scam networks? And how can families discuss this issue without shame or blame or condescension?
You've hit on so many excellent points right off the bat. I think the first thing to recognize is that we are in a time like no other. We've always known about scams. We've been familiar with the Nigerian prince, but we are in an unprecedented time in history. And that is a situation where we have transnational organized criminals laser focused on stealing a generation's worth of wealth from us. And so we need to acknowledge that. And we need to really normalize discussions about what kind of scams are you hearing about? What are your neighbors saying? I heard this. Have you heard about that? We need to talk about all the different types of ways that someone could surprise you, raise your blood pressure, and not give you any time to make a decision that requires you to move a lot of money. And so I think that we need, more important even than the specific scams that are out there, we need to just acknowledge that we're under attack. And so we need to treat every incoming message as though it is a scam until proven otherwise, even though that's not how we normally behave. Now, you asked specifically about retirees. And what we're finding, the World Health Organization has documented that we are in a loneliness crisis. And so when we really think of the root of what is causing these scams to be so incredibly successful, it's that we've got a lot of people who are home alone. And COVID started this, but it continues today. We have people that created a work from home environment and never went back. And while they may communicate on Zoom, they're not having any real interpersonal, let's go to lunch, let's go downstairs and grab a Coke during the day. That type of human interaction isn't happening at scale anymore. And so you've got lonely people sitting at home that when a text comes in that appears to be interesting and fun, it's appealing. And we have a lot of our seniors sitting home feeling very lonely. We've got widows, we've got widowers, we've got divorcees. And, I know it sounds trite, but what we really need is more in-person mechanisms for getting out of your house and seeing other people. I think that would go a long way to having accountability among people, because when we're living at home, we can slide into a situation where nobody's checking us and we can just be on our phones. We're isolated. And so retirees are particularly attractive because they might be alone, or they might just be tired of their spouse after 40 years. And I don't mean that in any way, but here's something new and shiny. And they've got a lot of money. And so they're a very desirable target, that if you can get in with a retiree, there is a lot of money that you might be able to go after.
Very interesting. And I think it dovetails nicely. Last year, we did a webinar on mental health, right? And exactly what you just mentioned, Erin, this post-pandemic of loneliness, right?
Yes.
Which
and
is
let's
still,
talk about it. Let's normalize it. Let's stop stigmatizing being alone or being depressed or, having whatever mental health issue you're having. And I'll tell you, as a mom of teens, it's happening a lot in the teenage community. There's all kinds of mental health issues that have developed when kids miss years of high school and miss years of learning how to communicate among each other.
100%. No, for sure. Hugh, I want to go back to you because our Fulbright community, obviously, we're folks who have lived abroad and we speak multiple languages and we're naturally open by default, right? And I want to pick up where you left off, saying, the antidote to this is not to close ourselves off, right? But we have to keep the openness, but have these kinds of safeguards in place. But can you add a bit more detail on how pig butchering scammers use cultural familiarity, language, trust building? I mean, how did you do it when you were a scammer, right? How did you build the emotional intelligence in order to manipulate victims? And more importantly, what are the warning signs that someone like a Fulbright retired person may actually be part of a structured scam operation?
Yep. Thank you for the question. Technically, the beach butchering scammers, they do not normally begin by asking for money. They begin by creating the formulate reality, relationship, building trust with you. And they may study a person's social media profile to learn where they study, which country they visited, their profession, interests, family situation, or the cultural background. And then they create a character who appear kind of like unusually compatible. They may speak the same language. Of course, right now they have AI. They can use AI, real-time translation, right? And against AI deepfake as well. And they own, they mention familiar city or university and say similar life experience, and slowly mirror the victim values and emotions. Just last week, I have one case that they impersonate one of my friends on LinkedIn. They clone exactly the same profile, exactly the educational and backgrounds and everything. And then they use that to impersonate as her to scam other people and lure them into like fake crypto investment platform, right? And sometimes just like that. And like when like it's appeared to be like one charming person, maybe like a social operation using like scams scripting, translation technology, AI generated profiles, and several workers they sharing the same account. Because I constantly um, working with law enforcement in Southeast Asia, and we gain the access into these scammer computer, and they see a whole bunch of scam accounts, normally Telegram accounts, Facebook account, WhatsApp account, and multiple workers they sharing the same account, right? And they are training to communicate every day, sweet talk to that person, and then they also have the check-in, kind of like a spreadsheet, to check in on the victims in real time and remember all the personal detail. And they also making the victim feel like understood. And the investment opportunity usually appears only after the emotional trust has been established. One of the scammer, he also one of these person who been working very closely with me last year in one of the case that I work with law enforcement in Vietnam, and he shared with me when the emotional trust has been established, that's over. You can kind of manipulate the victim completely. Whatever you tell them, they do for you. Kind of you completely control their mind. I mean, the victimized, and that's very kind of, to me, that's very scary. And I would watch for several warning signs, like kind of wrong numbers message that become like unusual failings, right? And also a quick request to move the conversation to WhatsApp or Telegram, right? And right now they also moving the victim to Signal as well too, because Telegram being monitored and collaborate with law enforcement and stuff like that, right? They also move to Signal, Discord, and many other platforms, right? And the 13th is someone whose background and interest same like almost perfectly match to yours, and strong romantic or emotional attention before you had met this person, and repeatedly like excusing for avoiding verifiable or kind of a face-to-face meeting, and also a new fan introducing like cryptocurrency, trading, AI trading, or a private investment opportunities, and also like instruction you to use a particular website or application. And sometimes this application is not officially from maybe like Google Play Store or Apple App Store. It come up like kind of like unknown application. You have to install so many different steps before you can be able to open that app, but that application, right? And it basically one that can be like in the, kind of very difficult to verify. It basically like with a normal system, they can't define this. And coaching about like what to tell to your bank, or asking you to hide your relationship from family and also a small successful withdrawal in the beginning, followed by pressure to invest a much larger amount. That's their status. Sometimes they let you win a couple of times, maybe a few thousand USD, and then they scam you for 100,000 USD. And they also demand for taxes, security deposits, or unlocking account fees before the money can withdraw. They can maculate all kind of excuses until you have to let go and you give up, right? And that's when okay, you in a big trouble, or you in a scam, right? And even a video call is no longer kind of definite truth, because scammer now they use AI deepfake or hire someone to appear briefly on camera. Because based on my researches, a few months ago, I working with Wire, and then we researched about they hire a model to use AI, and sometimes the model maybe in Russia, Ukraine, maybe in Vietnam, could be anywhere in the world. They just sitting there with a laptop and they become model online model technically, and then they get paid very high salary, 4,000, 5,000, sometimes 7,000 USD per month, just to sit in there and sweet talk to the victims.
Wow.
And depend on them. If they want to use AI, they provide for you the software to swap your face.
Yeah.
If you don't want to use AI, it's fine. You feel confident, it's okay. They pay for you more money, right?
Yeah.
And based on the FBI documents, this progressions from like the on solid side contact to just building to a fake investment platform, and eventually they demand for additional kind of like more fees, more money, and that's what we so-called fake crypto investment fraud.
Yeah.
And
So
my
this
simple
really,
advice is never invest based on a relationship that began online.
yeah.
I get this Erin West always talking about this about this, and verify a person and investment separately, using different source that they didn't provide to you in the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, this shows just the deep sophistication, right? And development around this whole issue. I mean, the fact that they can leverage AI, the fact that they can hire, a pretty model, so somewhere else to just spend a couple hours. That just shows the level of sophistication that we're dealing with. And then I think, one thing that really stuck out to me, what you just said, was always a sense of urgency, right? Like if an email is saying, "Oh, you need to invest now," or "You need to send over money now," like you should probably stand back, cool it for a little bit, and say, "Is this real?" Right?
Yeah.
Erin, I want to go back to you because you've consistently described scams not just as fraud, but actually as a form of transnational organized crime, right? So how should we, just Americans, Fulbrighters, in general, understand the global architecture behind a single scam or sort of single WhatsApp message? What's the transnational nature of this? Are there nation state actors potentially behind this? Can you unpack that?
Yeah, this is the perfect audience to really get into what's behind these scams, because I think it's very easy to dismiss these as one-offs, as, oh, it seems like an elderly woman who got tricked into sending gift cards again. But really, what Hughes just described is an industry, and it's an industry that is growing unlike any industry we've ever seen. The data from FBI shows that it's triple-digit increase year on year. So when you see the FBI IC3 data, the data that shows internet crime data, it's relatively flat from 2000 to 2020. And starting in 2020, it goes up like a rocket. And that is when transnational organized crime entered. And what they did is they took this on as an industry and they started building, just like Hugh described, companies with distinct roles in companies, with the infrastructure of a company, and certainly with the financial wherewithal of a very successful company. But the issue here is that they are using these companies to steal a significant amount of wealth from not just the United States, but other companies. And that causes internal chaos. When you start thinking about at scale, if you are stealing the ability of our retirees to live in the way that they had expected to live, and now the state has to compensate for that, we've got a real distinction in how money is moving. When we move a generation's worth of wealth into the hands of bad actors, and by bad actors, I mean triad, I mean known people that do not hold the same missions and values as us. What we also see is the ability of places like China to claw their way into other locations on the globe at the same time that organized crime is flourishing there. An example is Cambodia. When organized crime started coming to Cambodia, they were enabled to do that by China's Belt and Road Initiative. China's Belt and Road gave them access to, they gave them fast roads. And what really is distinct from a national security point of view is that the United States used to have warships docked at the Ream Naval Base in Cambodia. We had a friendly relationship and we had ships docked there. During this time period where so much money is coming into the Cambodian government as a result of the scam industry that is allowed to flourish there, it makes it easier for China to come in and have clout with the government and to say, you know what, we'd actually like to dig that port out for you, make you a deep water port. Let's move the Americans out and we will modernize that port for you. Oh, and P.S., we'll also give you a warship. And then in addition, at that same time that's happening, they are under the fictitious idea that they are building a modern city that's going to attract tourism. They build an airport that can accommodate military-style aircraft just 37 miles from that port. So now China has built the airport, China has built the base, and so China has access to water that they did not have access to before. So what we're watching is a real-world movement of power that is happening in tandem. Can we draw a straight line from triad to the Communist Party? Not very well, and because they're so good at concealing that. Can we see that in certain countries they are both experiencing an increase in power at the same time? We sure can.
Absolutely, and this is connected with some of my own research too about this idea of geocriminality, right?
Yes.
To what extent do state actors, not just the Chinese, right, but also Russia,
Sure.
Iran, North Korea,
Yes.
How do they directly or indirectly benefit from
Right.
criminal actors in order to further their national interests? And this is becoming, again, truly transnational, not just in Southeast Asia, but increasingly in Latin America and the Caribbean, and even within our own borders.
Right.
Maine, Oklahoma,
Yes. We've got
California,
major
and things
problems
like that.
that are happening on our own soil. And I think
Absolutely.
that my takeaway from all this is we need to open our eyes wide to what is happening in real time and be aware that this is happening on our own soil and that there are things that we can do about it. We need to start talking about it out loud.
100%. Now I am gonna shift to audience Q&A. So if you guys have questions, either put it right in the chat or the Q&A function, or if you want to ask the speakers directly, you can just raise your hand and unmute your mic. But I have one more question before I open it up to the group, and I'll just do kind of a twofer. So Hugh, from your perspective, you already touched on this a little bit, but if you can kind of summarize again, what are the practical habits that we, as a Fulbright community,
Yeah.
around passwords, messaging apps, investment offers, and things like that? What are some of the specific steps as we as individuals take? And then, Erin, on your perspective, what's the global response look like from sort of a government to government perspective? What does right look like? Have you seen any sort of best practices in other countries or pitfalls to
Yep.
avoid? If you guys can talk about that, starting with Hugh.
Yep. Yes. Thank you. I always tell with the people, right? The three main key things is about very easy to stop scam and to avoid scam. The first thing is about slow down or pause. Second, verify. And the last step is report. That's only 3 steps. Because we, we too quick to, to send in money or chit chat with stranger online that we don't know before. So right now we need to post, verify, and report. So like to kind of to clarify and to modify to be more clear on the first thing, the first step is to post. Scammer they manufacture urgency because urgency prevents critical thinking. Before sending money or sharing like verification code or installing a malicious application. So we stop and speak with somebody we trust. And for significant financial transaction, I recommend a 24 hours cooling off period and confirmation for a second from a second person or from someone you trust. And second, verify the source. They verify different contact, different ways. Do not just display name, caller ID, profile, photograph, or even like a video call by itself. If someone claims to represent a bank, a government agency, or even like Fulbright organization, and the only thing you can do, right, like just end the conversation and contact that organization to the official number or the website that you already know to be legitimate. And of course, nowadays you can using AI, ChatGPT or whatever to verify. That's very easy. And never use the contact information supply in the suspicious message from the scammer. And everyone should also remember all of the cybersecurity tips. The first thing is about using a password manager and make sure different passwords for every important account, and always enable like multi-factor authentication. And you can use like authenticator application or security key or passkey on any email platform, banking, or social media platforms. And never disclose your one-time password or the OTP. And always just your investment introduced to social media dating application, WhatsApp or Telegram or any kinds of chat application as extremely high risk, and never pay for additional fee or tax to release supposedly frozen investment profits. And also never just or believe any kind of recovery program. they may say, oh yeah, they can recover your scam money, stuff like that. That's, most of that is a scam. And always reduce your the visible personal information like email, phone number, your home address, because these cyber criminal, they can use to create a convincing story. And always create a family or chapter scam body that host member can contact without embarrassment before transferring the money. And of course, final step is always report quickly to law enforcement, to the IC3, even to the Operation Shamrock as well, right? And victims also should be always be warned about recovery scammers who claim they can retrieve like stolen cryptocurrency for an upfront fee. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Erin?
Yeah, thank you, Hugh. That was a really great laundry list of things that we can do. And I always forget about the recovery scammers who they notoriously slide in at the end and steal more money. When I think about solutions to this, there is no solution that works without working together with people that you didn't ordinarily used to work with. And it requires you to think about this in a new way. Law enforcement notoriously has been closed door. We know everything. We're not going to tell you anything. Same with banking. Banking is like, we're not going to share any information. Same with social media. Same with working country to country. And so I'll give you an example of a couple things that have worked. What we've seen recently is joint responses there was one in Nigeria that was the UK and Nigeria working together to shut down a scam center that was targeting British people. And it shows that this can be done. For a long time, we've thought, Nigeria is a dead end. There's nothing you can do there. But if you start actually starting those conversations and having the in-person conversations, that's when people can work together and move forward. When we start calling out the very grave consequences of not doing this, it becomes very clear that this is what we have to do. And I did it even on a smaller level. A week and a half ago, I was in Nigeria with a sextortion expert. And what we proved by being on the ground for 6 days in Nigeria is that we could, without badges and guns, use open source information and colleagues and friends to figure out how to connect a bank account to a phone number, to a social media account, to a location, and ultimately we're able to have a conversation with that scammer. So the way forward is more sharing. And I have a podcast, Stolen, and I had a colleague on this week who talked about data sharing. Everybody acts like it can't be done. It's such a deal. And what he said, he's done this 4 different times, getting like the automotive industry to share information, is that you start small. Like, what are the things today that we can agree on? Because I think so frequently we say, well, this seems really hard. Let's walk away for 90 days and come back. And then in 90 days, we say the same thing. But what can we do today? What are you willing to share today? Can you tell me some MOs? Can you tell me some typologies you're seeing? Can we start with that? And I think that's the way forward, is more and more working together with people who didn't really used to communicate, but just being willing to open the door just a little bit.
Absolutely. Great suggestions from both of you, for sure. All right. Well, we have 16 minutes left, and we have some questions. So I'm going to ask a few, and feel free to answer, but please be judicious in how much you answer, so we can get as many questions in as possible. So the first one is from Sharon Silverman. And she said, do you recommend deleting access to Facebook and LinkedIn in order to increase personal security?
I'm happy to take a stab at it, and I'm sure Hugh has some ideas too. I'll tell you what, we can live in fear and we can close down all access to us. That is one way to live. And if that suits your comfort level, by all means do it. But I don't want the scammers to beat us by taking away things that are actually helpful to us. And I'm sure there are plenty of Facebook groups that are meaningful to you that I would hate to have you lose. There are plenty. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. I've had amazing response to some of the things I've said and done on LinkedIn that I would not have. So there's a little bit of accepting, yes, you're putting yourself out there. And I know Hugh will talk to you about how to be judicious about what you're putting out there.
Yep. Thank you, Erin. Yeah, it's a great question, or also like difficult question. Technically, I'm still using Facebook, even though I am a securities expert, and I also use LinkedIn as well too. So, but the thing is, you have to, before you posting or putting anything out there online, you need to make sure that it's not related to your personal life. It could be professional life, it's okay, but nothing related to like personal information or identity, stuff like that. Even your family's stuff. I never post anything like family pictures, even like my kid, my daughter, nothing like that. So the only thing is, like posting like things that related to that. It could be helpful for society. Of course, like we have social media platform is very good if we can use that in a healthy way, and we can connect to many people and happy people, raising cybersecurity awareness, for instance, as Erin been doing, and I see that, like, so we don't need to be afraid of that. We have to use our voice and our strong voice and our strong communities to push them out of these things, like that's how we do. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think connected to this question is one by Curtis Hoffman, which is a question around social media platforms, right? I mean, to what extent should they be responsible for regulating this kind of behavior? So his question specifically was, Erin, you're prolific on social media and you've garnered attention through visual media and personal narratives. You are working to keep social media platforms accountable. My question is there a tipping point for social media companies before they make large-scale changes to their platforms? If so, what does that tipping point look like?
If you follow me in any type of social media, you know that I call out Meta on the regular. And the reason why I call them out is because they are absolutely the enablers of this scam. And it's not just Meta, it's other American companies. It is Starlink, it is Cash App, it is PayPal. There are American companies that are distinctly earning money from the scamdemic. And the more frequently with louder voices that we call them out, the more we try to influence what can be done. Our problem with companies like Meta is that they hide themselves behind Communications Act 230 that says we are not responsible for what happens on our platform. Now, I would argue that where that stops is when you are accepting money and financially benefiting from ads that you know are scams. And if you saw the article written by Jeff Horowitz for Reuters, you know that he has proven that they are well aware of the amount of scam ads they are taking in and that they are benefiting by $16 billion a year by that.
Yep.
I think what we have here is very much a David versus Goliath. We have people that are scared to death of Meta because of how much they have, because they sit next to the president at events. And what we need is some real bravery out here. And we need real people with power calling out the destruction that Meta is unleashing, not just on financial victims, but on children in so many ways. There are so many ways to cut this pie where Meta looks bad, and yet they continue to do it and financially benefit from it.
Wow.
Yep.
And well said. Hugh, you have anything more to add?
No, I'm good. Thanks. Yeah.
Well, we got some good comments. One from Julie Wilson, who mentioned that over the past 9 months, her organization has been testing how well AI models can identify sophisticated scam scripts, running the same material through three different tools. And what they're finding is that detection is inconsistent. And part of the challenge is that the same AI capabilities being offered as a safeguard are also being used to help generate and refine those scams. Advising victims to simply ask an AI if it's a scam may give a false sense of security. So I guess it's another way to show how these groups are becoming so sophisticated that they're leveraging AI in order to get after these folks as well. Um, do you guys have any more examples of that of sort of these groups leveraging AI in a sophisticated way?
Well, absolutely. I had a, I
Yeah.
mean, just from the very most basic, I speak to victims on Fridays, and I met with a guy and he said, Erin, I know who my scammer is. And I said, great, who is it? And he said, it's Miss Malaysia 2016. And I said, how do you know that? And he's like, because I talked to her and I reversed imaged her and I know that it's her. And he had never heard of deepfake before. And so just because we on this call are very well aware of what it looks like when you swap faces, that doesn't mean that the general population is so keyed into what that is. And yes, he was talking to the face of Miss Malaysia 2016, but that's certainly who it was. I think there's a lot of belief that they are leveraging AI in much greater capacity than they are. And I defer to Hugh on this. I know they use deepfakes. I think they could be using AI a lot more skillfully than they are, quite frankly. But my research hasn't unearthed the AI farms that I expected to be out there.
Yep.
Great. And we've got another comment, someone, Kate Vergara, sharing her story. She was a Fulbright alum, Peru, 2020, so 2003 to 2004. And she wants to
Yep.
share with the community that just last year she was targeted by a very complex scam posing as an executive recruiting initiative for Moderna. Communications were very realistic, included multiple contacts and email accounts, occurred over several weeks, passed basic verify checks and so on and so forth. And basically, it was a real wake-up call for her, and she did not consider herself as an easy target. Kate, I agree with you 100%. As I mentioned in the beginning, even the Fulbright Association National, we have also been a victim of this. There were some scammers impersonating me, sending emails to other board members saying, "Oh, you need to Zelle money to the Fulbright Association with a sense of urgency and things like that." Luckily, our board members weren't, a target or didn't respond to that. But one of our local chapters did, and so we're dealing with that issue, as we speak. So yeah, it's definitely an issue. All of us, none of us are safe, and it's definitely an issue that we all have to deal with. All right, well, we've got just a little bit, of a
Yep.
few minutes left before the top of the hour, and so just want to give the space for Erin, Hugh, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think what Kate's saying is our greatest fear and our greatest watch point. That this is only going to get more sophisticated. They're only going to get
Yeah.
better at this. They started this years ago and they were able to function unimpeded for years and years and years. And so they will only get better at this. And we have to be better with literally every electronic communication that comes in. And that's not fun and that's not what we're used to, but that's where we are now.
Yep. Thank you, Erin. My last message to share with Fulbright communities is always double check. No, the first step is post. Second step is always double check and verify. And the last step is report. Because the people, they always forget about the report, the last step. Because that last step is very important, not only helping yourself, but also helping others as well.
Yeah.
And to gathering more information and evidence, especially for law enforcement, making stronger cases. And that's what I learned from experience. And similar like my case, back then on my sentencing day, the federal judge, he told me he received over 20,000 letters from the victims. And that my case is very terrible case. And to me, it's what is it. But anyway, always remember to report and be confident. And of course, we live in the world of artificial intelligence, AI right now. The skill of verify is number one.
Great.
That's the number one thing.
Great.
Before, we don't need to verify much, but we live in the world of AI right now. The skill number one is verify. Right. Thank you for this event.
No, great words and advice to lead us on. So, Erin and Hugh, thank you so much for your time. This was an incredibly insightful conversation. I just want to say to the community again, if you haven't done so already, register for the Global Day of Service on August 1st, and also come to our global conference October 23rd to 25th in DC at Johns Hopkins SAIS. And thank you again for another great edition of our Fulbright Lens. I hope that everybody has a great rest of your week, and take care.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for having me.